I know the exact time because I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and a spreadsheet open on my laptop. I had been calculating, for the 100th time, whether I could afford to keep this house if my brother and his wife finally moved out. The answer, as always, was barely. My phone buzzed against the wooden table, and I picked it up expecting spam or perhaps a work emergency. Instead, I saw my brother Marcus's name on the screen, along with a photo attachment. I opened it. The image showed Marcus and his wife Elena standing in front of a modest two-story house with blue shutters. They were grinning widely, holding a set of keys between them. Below the photo was a message that made my blood run cold. Surprise! Thanks to you paying for everything these past 3 years, we saved up and bought our own place. Moving out this weekend. Now live alone. You're welcome for the heads up. LOL. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. My hands began to shake so badly that I had to set the phone down. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, though whether from rage or heartbreak, I couldn't tell. Perhaps both. 3 years. For 3 years, I had housed my younger brother and his wife rent-free. I had paid every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every unexpected expense that came with maintaining a home. I had told myself I was being a good sister. I had told myself that family helps family. I had told myself that their struggles were temporary, that they were working towards something, that soon they would stand on their own feet and everything would balance out. Instead, they had been saving every penny they earned while I slowly drowned in debt. The worst part, they sent that message at nearly 4 in the morning, probably drunk on celebration, probably laughing about it. The LOL at the end was the final twist of the knife. I sat in the darkness of my kitchen, the blue glow of my laptop illuminating my face, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. Then I closed my eyes and traveled back through time, remembering how we got here. It started with a phone call in the middle of winter, 3 years ago. I was 34 then, finally stable after years of struggling. I had landed a decent job as a project manager at a marketing firm, and I had just finished paying off my student loans. My modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I had painted the walls myself, planted flowers in the garden, hung curtains that matched the furniture. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was building something. Then Marcus called. "Hey sis," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone I knew all too well. It was the tone he used when he needed something but wanted to sound casual about it. "How's everything?" "Fine," I replied, already bracing myself. "What's going on?" There was a pause. In the background, I could hear Elena's voice, muffled and urgent. "So, here's the thing," Marcus said. "We're in a bit of a situation. The landlord sold our building, and the new owner wants to convert it to condos. We have 60 days to move out." "That's rough," I said, genuinely sympathetic. "Have you started looking for a new place?" Another pause. Longer this time. "That's actually why I'm calling. The rental market here is insane, Rachel. Everything is either way too expensive or in neighborhoods where Elena doesn't feel safe. We've been looking for weeks, and we just can't find anything." I felt the request coming before he spoke it. "We were wondering if maybe, just for a little while, we could stay with you. Just until we get back on our feet. A few months, tops." I should have said no. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to say no. Marcus had always been the charming one, the golden child who could talk his way out of anything. Growing up, I had watched him borrow money from our parents that he never repaid, make promises he never kept, and somehow always land on his feet while others cleaned up his messes. But he was my brother. And Elena, despite everything, seemed genuinely sweet. She worked as a preschool teacher and spoke with such enthusiasm about her students. When Marcus introduced her to the family 2 years earlier, I had thought maybe she would be good for him. Maybe she would help him grow up. "A few months," I said slowly. Absolutely, Marcus promised. We'll help with groceries, pitch in around the house. You won't even know we're there. I agreed. They arrived with 2 carloads of belongings and immediately took over the guest room. The first week went smoothly enough. Elena baked cookies as a thank you gesture, and Marcus helped me fix a leaky faucet in the bathroom. We ate dinner together, watched movies on weekends, and for a brief moment, it felt nice to have company in a house that had grown too quiet. Then the second week came. "Hey sis," Marcus said one evening, catching me as I walked through the door after a long day at work. "Small problem. Elena's car broke down, and the repair estimate is ridiculous. Like, $2,000 ridiculous." I set my bag down slowly. "That's awful. What are you going to do?" "Well, that's the thing." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. "We've been looking at our budget, and with the move and everything, we're pretty tapped out. We were hoping maybe you could cover it, just this once. We'll pay you back once we're settled." I should have asked questions. I should have asked to see their budget. I should have asked how 2 working adults had managed to save nothing despite having no major expenses. Instead, I wrote a check for $2,000. "Thanks, Ratch. You're the best sister ever," Marcus said, hugging me tightly. The $2,000 was never repaid. Neither was the $500 I loaned them the following month when Elena's student loans came due, and they claimed they had been caught off guard by the timing. Neither was the $800 for the new laptop Marcus insisted he needed for a freelance project that would pay off big time. The freelance project never materialized. By the end of the second month, a pattern had established itself. Marcus and Elena would hint about financial difficulties. I would offer help. They would accept gratefully, promise to pay me back, and then the promise would quietly disappear, never mentioned again. I started keeping a running total in a notebook hidden in my bedroom drawer. By month 3, they owed me nearly $6,000. But it went beyond loans. Despite Marcus's promise that they would pitch in around the house, I found myself doing everything. The dishes piled up unless I washed them. The garbage overflowed unless I took it out. The bathroom they used developed a permanent layer of grime that I scrubbed away on weekends while they slept in until noon. When I gently suggested they contribute to groceries, Marcus laughed. "Come on, Ratch, we're family. You're not seriously going to nickel and dime us over food, are you?" I backed down. When I mentioned that the electric bill had doubled since they moved in, Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "We've been trying so hard to save money, but it's just so difficult. Are we a burden? Should we leave?" I assured her they were not a burden. I told her to forget I mentioned it. The electric bill continued to climb. 6 months passed. Then a year. Then 2. Every time I worked up the courage to ask when they planned to move out, something would happen. Elena would get sick and need expensive medication that their insurance did not cover. Marcus would lose a client and need time to rebuild. Their car would break down again. A family emergency would drain whatever savings they claimed to have. And every time, I was the one who covered the gap. My own finances began to suffer. I stopped contributing to my retirement account. I canceled my gym membership. I gave up the small luxuries that had made my life pleasant, things like dinner with friends, weekend trips, new clothes that were not strictly necessary. Meanwhile, Marcus and Elena seemed to live without restriction. They ordered takeout multiple times a week. Elena accumulated an impressive collection of handbags and shoes. Marcus bought a new gaming console for unwinding after his stressful workdays. When I questioned these purchases, they acted wounded. "We work hard," Marcus said defensively. "We deserve to enjoy ourselves sometimes." I did not point out that their ability to enjoy themselves was funded entirely by my sacrifice. I swallowed my resentment and told myself that they were family, that things would change, that eventually they would see how much I was giving and would want to give back. They never did. The real breaking point came 6 months before that late-night text message. I had been feeling run down for weeks, exhausted in a way that sleep did not fix. My doctor ran some tests and discovered that my blood pressure was dangerously high, likely from stress. She prescribed medication and strongly suggested I make lifestyle changes. "You need to reduce your stress levels," she said seriously. "Your body is telling you something is wrong." I went home that day determined to have a real conversation with Marcus and Elena. I would explain my health situation. I would ask them, firmly but kindly, to start contributing financially or to make a concrete plan for moving out. I would set boundaries for the first time in 2 years. I found them in the living room, watching television. "Hey," I said, sitting down across from them. "I need to talk to you about something important." Marcus barely glanced away from the screen. "What's up?" I took a deep breath. "I went to the doctor today. My blood pressure is really high, and she thinks it's from stress. I need to make some changes in my life, and part of that is being honest about my financial situation." Now I had their attention. Elena muted the television, her expression concerned. "The truth is, I'm struggling," I continued. "Having you here without any financial contribution has put a lot of strain on me. I need you to either start paying rent and utilities, or we need to have a serious conversation about when you're planning to move out." There was a long silence. Then Marcus laughed. "Wow, Ratch, way to make us feel like freeloaders." I blinked. "That's not what I meant." "It kind of is, though," he said, his tone shifting to something harder. "We've been helping around here. We've been doing our part. Just because we're going through a rough patch doesn't mean you get to guilt trip us." "A rough patch," I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "Marcus, you've been here for 2 years. At some point, a rough patch becomes a lifestyle." Elena's eyes filled with tears again. This time, I noticed something I had not noticed before. The tears seemed to appear on command, like a switch being flipped. "I knew we weren't wanted," she whispered. "I told Marcus this would happen. Your sister has always resented us." "That's not true," I said, but doubt crept into my voice. Marcus stood up, crossing his arms. "You know what, Rachel? If our presence is such a burden, maybe we should just leave. Maybe we should pack our bags right now and live on the street. Would that make you happy?" It was a manipulation tactic I had seen him use 100 times before, escalating the situation to make the other person back down. And like all those times before, it worked. "No, of course not," I said quietly. "I just need some help. That's all I'm asking." "We'll figure something out," Marcus said dismissively, sitting back down and unmuting the television. "Just give us a little more time." I retreated to my bedroom and cried silently into my pillow. After that conversation, things changed. Not the living situation. That remained exactly the same. But the atmosphere in the house grew cold. Marcus and Elena spoke to me only when necessary. They made pointed comments about how they felt unwelcome. They left messes in common areas that seemed almost deliberate, as if punishing me for daring to ask for consideration. I considered kicking them out. I researched the legal process, even consulted with a lawyer about how to formally evict family members. But every time I moved toward action, something stopped me. Guilt. Fear. The voice of my mother in my head, telling me that family sticks together no matter what. My mother had passed away 5 years earlier, but her influence remained powerful. So I endured. I worked overtime to cover the mounting expenses. I took on freelance projects in my limited spare time. I stopped eating lunch to save money, telling myself it was intermittent fasting rather than poverty. My health deteriorated, but I told my doctor I was managing my stress, and she had no way of knowing I was lying. Meanwhile, I watched Marcus and Elena continue their comfortable existence. They started talking about their future more openly, discussing plans that seemed to exclude me. Elena mentioned wanting a garden. Marcus talked about neighborhoods he liked. I assumed they were daydreaming, building castles in the sky the way people do when real change seems impossible. I never imagined they were actually making it happen. Which brings us back to that text message at 3:47 in the morning. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the photo of my brother and his wife in front of their new house. Their house. Bought with money they had saved because I had paid for everything else. The mathematics were brutal in their simplicity. For 3 years, I had covered their rent, which would have been at least $1,000 a month even for a modest apartment. That was $36,000. I had paid their share of utilities, easily $200 a month. $7,200. I had covered groceries, car repairs, medical expenses, and countless other costs. Conservatively, another $15,000. In total, I had given them nearly $60,000 over 3 years. Not as loans that they might someday repay, but as gifts that they never acknowledged as such. And with that $60,000 they did not have to spend, they had quietly saved enough for a down payment on a house. Their house was worth, according to the text thread I kept scrolling through, around $250,000. A 20% down payment would have been $50,000. The money I had unknowingly provided. I had quite literally bought them a house. And their thank you was a text message with LOL at the end. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my kitchen and let myself feel everything I had suppressed for 3 years. The anger. The grief. The profound sense of betrayal. I let it wash over me in waves, and I did not try to stop the tears or the occasional sounds of pain that escaped my throat. By dawn, something had shifted inside me. I had spent years believing that my worth as a person was measured by my usefulness to others. I had sacrificed my financial security, my health, and my happiness on the altar of family obligation. I had told myself that love meant giving without expectation, even when that giving was destroying me. But sitting in that kitchen, watching the sunrise paint the walls orange and gold, I realized something important. Love is not exploitation. Family is not supposed to feast on your bones. And no amount of shared blood makes it acceptable to be treated as a resource to be drained rather than a person to be respected. I picked up my phone and began typing a response to Marcus's message. I deleted it. I typed again. Deleted again. I went through a dozen drafts, each one more emotional than the last. Finally, I settled on simplicity. Congratulations on the house. Please have all your belongings out by Sunday. Then I turned off my phone and went to take a shower. The weekend that followed was surreal. Marcus and Elena showed up on Saturday morning with a rented moving truck and several friends I had never met. They moved through my house like strangers, packing boxes and carrying furniture with an efficiency that suggested they had been planning this for months. Perhaps they had. I stayed in my bedroom mostly, coming out only when necessary. When Marcus passed me in the hallway, he nodded curtly but said nothing. Elena avoided my gaze entirely. By Sunday afternoon, the guest room was empty. The bathroom they had used was stripped of their toiletries. The living room felt larger without their gaming console and collection of throw pillows. As they loaded the last boxes into the truck, Marcus finally approached me. So that's it then, he said, his tone flat. That's it, I agreed. He studied me for a moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps. Or maybe just irritation that I was not making this easier for him. You know, you could have just been happy for us, he said. Normal siblings would be happy. I let out a small, sad laugh. Normal siblings don't spend 3 years mooching off their sister while secretly saving for a house. Normal siblings say thank you when someone sacrifices their financial future for them. Normal siblings don't send a gloating text message at 4 in the morning. Marcus's jaw tightened. We didn't mooch. We were going through a hard time. A hard time that lasted 3 years while you bought gaming consoles and designer handbags, I said quietly. A hard time that magically ended the moment you had saved enough of my money to move out. It wasn't your money, Marcus snapped. It was ours. We earned it. You earned it because you weren't spending it, I replied. Because I was spending it for you. Do the math, Marcus. Add up every dollar you didn't have to pay for rent, utilities, food, and everything else. Tell me that number doesn't equal your down payment. He had no response to that. Elena appeared at his side, tugging his arm. Let's go. She's never going to understand. They walked to the truck without looking back. I stood in my doorway and watched them drive away, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Relief. The weeks that followed were difficult in ways I had not anticipated. My house, which had felt crowded for 3 years, now felt cavernously empty. The silence was oppressive. I would catch myself listening for footsteps that were not there, bracing for conversations that would never happen. I also had to face the financial wreckage they had left behind. My credit cards were nearly maxed out. My savings account, which had once held a comfortable cushion, was down to a few $100s. I had stopped contributing to my retirement account 2 years earlier and had actually withdrawn some funds to cover expenses, incurring penalties and taxes that made me sick to calculate. At 37 years old, I was essentially starting over. But something unexpected happened as I confronted the damage. I got angry. Not the suppressed, guilty anger I had felt while Marcus and Elena were living with me. Not the kind of anger that turns inward and becomes depression. This was clean anger, bright and clarifying, the kind that fuels action rather than paralysis. I was angry at Marcus and Elena for using me. I was angry at myself for allowing it. I was angry at a society that teaches women that their value lies in self-sacrifice, that caring for others is noble even when it destroys you, that setting boundaries is selfish. And I channeled that anger into rebuilding my life. I created a budget so strict it would have made an accountant weep. I picked up extra freelance work, taking on projects I would have previously considered beneath me. I sold items I did not need, negotiated lower rates on my bills, and cut every expense that was not absolutely essential. I also started therapy. My therapist, a patient woman named Dr. Chen, helped me understand the patterns that had led me to this point. We talked about my childhood, about growing up in the shadow of a charming younger brother who could do no wrong. We talked about my mother, who had always expected me to be the responsible one, the caretaker, the solver of problems that were not mine to solve. You were trained to put others first, Dr. Chen observed during one session. You were taught that your needs are secondary, that asking for reciprocity is greedy. Unlearning those lessons takes time. She was right. It did take time. But slowly, week by week, I began to change. For months after Marcus and Elena moved out, I received an unexpected phone call. It was my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. We had never been close, but she had always been kind to me in a distant, formal way. "Rachel," she said, her voice warm, "I heard about what happened with your brother." I tensed. "What did you hear?" "The truth, I hope. Marcus came to me asking for money last week. Said he and Elena were struggling with their mortgage payments. I asked why he couldn't ask you, and he got very defensive. So I did some investigating." I was silent, not sure what to say. "I talked to your cousin Jennifer," Aunt Patricia continued. "She told me that Marcus and Elena lived with you for 3 years without paying rent. Is that true?" "Yes," I said quietly. "And he never mentioned that when asking me for money. He made it sound like you had abandoned him." I laughed bitterly. "Of course he did." There was a pause on the line. Then Aunt Patricia sighed. "Your mother, God rest her soul, always favored Marcus. She thought he was special, that he just needed the right opportunities to thrive. She asked me once toward the end to look after him when she was gone. I told her I would. I know, I said. She asked me the same thing. Yes, but here's what she didn't tell you, Rachel. She also said something else. She said she worried she had been unfair to you. She said she hoped you wouldn't spend your whole life taking care of your brother the way she had spent hers taking care of her own. I felt tears prick my eyes. She said that. She did. And I think, if she could see what's happened, she would tell you that you've done enough. More than enough. It's time to live your own life. We talked for another hour. Aunt Patricia told me stories about my mother that I had never heard, stories about the sacrifices she had made for her own siblings, the resentment she had carried, the regrets she had expressed in her final days. By the end of the call, I was sobbing, but they were healing tears. Before we hung up, Aunt Patricia said one more thing. I'm not giving Marcus the money, by the way. He needs to learn that actions have consequences. And if he calls you, asking you to intervene, I want you to say no. I will, I promised. And I meant it. 6 months after the move out, my life looked completely different. I had paid off one of my credit cards entirely and was making solid progress on the others. My savings account was slowly growing again. I had earned a promotion at work, partly because I was no longer exhausted from carrying the weight of 2 extra adults, and partly because I had finally learned to advocate for myself. I had also started dating. His name was David, and we had met at a coffee shop near my office. He was a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor, and he listened when I talked in a way that made me feel seen rather than tolerated. On our 3rd date, I told him the whole story. Marcus and Elena. The 3 years of financial abuse. The text message that had broken something open in me. I expected him to be put off by the messiness of it all. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry that happened to you, he said simply. And I'm glad you got out. I'm glad too, I admitted. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then David smiled. You know what's interesting? Most people would be bitter after something like that. Closed off. But you're not. You're open and generous and kind. That takes real strength. Or stupidity, I joked. No, he said seriously. Strength. There's a difference between being generous because you don't value yourself and being generous because you choose to be, knowing your own worth. You've clearly made the transition. I thought about his words for a long time afterward. He was right. I had changed. The generosity that had once been a desperate attempt to earn love had become something else entirely, a conscious choice made from a position of security rather than scarcity. I liked who I was becoming. 1 year after the move out, Marcus called me. I almost did not answer. My finger hovered over the decline button for several long seconds. But something made me pick up. Rachel, he said, and I could hear immediately that something was wrong. His voice was thick, like he had been crying. I need to talk to you. Okay, I said cautiously. Talk. Elena left me. I absorbed this information in silence. She's been seeing someone else for months, Marcus continued, the words tumbling out. Some guy from her school. A parent of one of her students. She says she never loved me, that she only stayed with me because I could provide for her. She's taking half of everything, including the house. I'm going to lose it all, Rachel. Everything. I waited for the old familiar guilt to rise up, the instinct to fix things, to make promises, to sacrifice myself on the altar of his needs. It did not come. I'm sorry that's happening, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I did not wish suffering on my brother. That sounds really painful. It is, he said. I don't know what to do. I was thinking maybe I could stay with you for a while. Just until I figure things out. And there it was. The real reason for the call. No, I said. The word came out calm and clear, without anger or malice. Just a simple statement of fact. What do you mean, no? Marcus sounded genuinely confused, as if the possibility of refusal had never occurred to him. I mean, no, you cannot stay with me. Not for a while. Not at all. Rachel, come on. I'm your brother. I'm family. Yes, you are, I agreed. And I love you, in a distant, complicated way. But I will never again let you live in my house. I will never again sacrifice my financial security for yours. I will never again allow myself to be used as a safety net for someone who sees my generosity as something to exploit rather than something to appreciate. There was a long silence. This is because of before, isn't it? Marcus said finally. You're still angry about the house thing. The house thing, I repeated slowly. You mean the thing where you lived with me rent-free for 3 years, saved all your money while I went into debt, bought a house with the savings, and then sent me a gloating text message about it? That house thing. We didn't gloat, he protested weakly. LOL, I said. Your exact word. LOL. As if the whole thing was a joke. As if I was a joke. I didn't mean it like that. Maybe not. But here's the thing, Marcus. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did. And what you did was take advantage of me for 3 years, show zero gratitude, and then announce your departure in the most callous way possible. Those are the facts. Your intentions are irrelevant. Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he might have hung up. I'm sorry, he said finally. His voice was small, almost childlike. I know I messed up. I know I took you for granted. I just never thought you would actually stop helping me. I know you didn't, I said. And that's the problem. You saw my help as an entitlement rather than a gift. You assumed it would always be there, no matter how badly you treated me. Well, it's not. I'm not. This is me, setting a boundary that I should have set years ago. So that's it? You're just cutting me off. I'm not cutting you off. I'm willing to have a relationship with you, Marcus. I'm willing to talk, to see each other on holidays, to be cordial. But I will not be your financial safety net. Ever again. What am I supposed to do? He asked, and now he sounded genuinely lost. I don't know, I said honestly. Figure it out. That's what adults do. I hung up the phone and sat in my quiet house, waiting for regret to wash over me. It never came. 2 years after the move out, I married David in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. Aunt Patricia came, along with a handful of friends and David's family. Marcus was not invited. Not out of spite, but because I had realized that his presence would bring anxiety rather than joy, and my wedding day deserved to be joyful. As I walked down the aisle toward the man I loved, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The years of struggle. The betrayal that had nearly broken me. The slow, painful work of rebuilding myself into someone who could recognize her own worth. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years earlier, sitting at her kitchen table at 4 in the morning, staring at a text message that shattered her world. I wished I could go back in time and tell her something. I would tell her that the breaking was necessary. That sometimes things have to fall apart before they can come together in a better way. That the pain she was feeling was not an ending but a beginning. I would tell her that she was stronger than she knew. And I would tell her that one day she would stand in a garden full of flowers, surrounded by people who genuinely loved her, about to marry a man who saw her clearly and cherished what he saw. I would tell her to hold on. 3 years after the move out, I received a letter. It came in a plain white envelope with no return address, but I recognized Marcus's handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was 2 pages long, written in a cramped hand that suggested he had struggled over every word. In it, Marcus apologized. Not the defensive, qualified apologies he had offered before. This was something different. He took full responsibility for his behavior. He acknowledged the financial harm he had caused. He admitted that he had always taken me for granted, had always assumed I would be there to catch him no matter how badly he fell. He wrote about his divorce, about losing the house, about hitting rock bottom. He wrote about the months he spent couch surfing with friends who eventually grew tired of him, about the wake-up call of realizing that no one wanted to help someone who never helped themselves. He wrote about going to therapy, about confronting the patterns that had defined his life, about the slow, humbling process of learning to take responsibility for himself. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for anything at all. He simply wanted me to know that he understood now, that he was sorry, that he hoped, someday, we might be able to rebuild some kind of relationship. I put the letter down and sat with the feelings it stirred up. There was sadness. There was grief for the relationship we might have had if things had been different. There was a small, cautious flicker of hope. But there was also clarity. I picked up a pen and wrote back. I told Marcus that I appreciated his letter, that I was glad he was doing the work to become a better person, that I hoped he would continue on that path, not for my sake, but for his own. I told him that I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because carrying resentment was exhausting and I had better things to do with my energy. But I also told him the truth. I told him that forgiveness did not mean reconciliation, that some bridges, once burned, could not be rebuilt, that I wished him well from a distance, but I was not interested in rebuilding a relationship that had caused me so much pain. I sealed the letter and mailed it the next day. Today, as I write this, it has been 5 years since that text message at 3:47 in the morning. I am 42 years old. I live in a house that is mine, paid for with money I earned through my own work. David and I are expecting our first child in 3 months, a girl we plan to name after my mother. My career is thriving. My health has improved dramatically now that I am no longer drowning in stress. My savings account is healthy. My retirement fund is back on track. I am happy. Not the fragile happiness of someone who depends on others for her sense of worth. Not the conditional happiness that evaporates the moment someone makes a demand. This is something sturdier. Something I built from the wreckage of betrayal. I still think about Marcus sometimes. I hear from Aunt Patricia that he is doing better. He has a steady job now, a small apartment, a life that is modest but stable. He has not reached out to me again, respecting the boundary I set in my letter. I am glad he is okay. I genuinely am. The anger I once felt has faded into something gentler, something like distant compassion for a person I once knew. But I do not miss him. What I miss, sometimes, is the sister I used to be. The one who believed so deeply in the goodness of family that she was willing to destroy herself to prove it. The one who thought love meant giving without limit, even when the giving was killing her. I am grateful that woman is gone. In her place is someone wiser. Someone who knows that love and exploitation are not the same thing. Someone who understands that boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out, but foundations meant to keep you standing. Someone who finally learned that she deserved to be treated with the same kindness she showed others. If you are reading this, and any part of my story sounds familiar, I want you to know something. You deserve better. You deserve to be seen as a person, not a resource. You deserve relationships that nourish you rather than drain you. You deserve to set boundaries without guilt, to protect yourself without shame, to choose your own well-being over the endless demands of people who will never be satisfied.